Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and this is going to be our master coaching lesson number 2. And one of the things when I do these lessons is I'm really talking about the global community of coaching, whether you're a coach, but more importantly, I'm dedicating this to leaders within workplaces that need to coach. And every leader should be coaching their employees in some fashion or another. And there's a mindset shift that needs to occur. I've actually been training for 30 plus years leaders how to coach and also coaching them and traveling the path. We now do something kind of cool called cadence coaching, where we partner with leaders on their journey of coaching individuals. I actually know the name of their employees, what they're coaching to, and that's how we assist them. And fundamentally, after all these years, I think we're back at ground zero. AI is throwing a big disruption into that. And here's my fear with AI. First of all, we build AI tools. I'm not against AI, but if I can have something do it for me, wow, that takes a lot of pressure off me. I don't have to spend time coaching. Wait a minute, didn't AI save you time? Don't you have time to coach now? By the way, when somebody quits, how do you find the time to interview and replace people who you didn't have time to coach? So there's a lot of interdependent relationships here. I would share this with all of you. I'm going to bring up a very simple looking image here. And there are 3 types of coaching. And this is where the mindset needs to shift. Okay. Needs to shift. And I'm going to use a weird parallel. I used to coach basketball. I used to coach my son in pre-high school, and I've coached volleyball for 30 years. I want you to think about just fundamental human skills. So number 1, a situation's brought to you. You're a leader. Someone knocks on your door, and it always happens this way. Boss, you got a second? You know it's going to be about 22 minutes, and there's going to be an element of frustration and emotion. And someone comes in and says, boss, I'm trying to work with Jack. He's kind of a jerk. And then you say, I got to solve this. I got to bring Jack in here. And then I talk to both parties and I situationally coach. And I've convinced myself, you know what? I think I solved that problem. No, you didn't. Because why is he hard to work with? Does he not know how to communicate? Does he struggle with conflict? Is he lacking confidence? Is he lacking emotional intelligence and self-regulation? What's prompting that situation is probably going to require a more continuous approach. Hint, hint. Number 2, I find this a lot in some of our credit union clients, and that is observational or spot coaching. They have formal observational coaching programs. I am not against that. By the way, I'm all for all 3 of these. Now, we tend to prescribe more to the continuous coaching, which I'll talk about. So when you sit there and you observe, we have to ask ourselves, are we triggered by things we want to correct and fix? Or are we triggered by positive things? Every time I ask that question, 90% of the audience, virtually, public speaking, webinars, will say, I'm triggered by the things I want to correct and fix. So then you got to ask yourself, are you motivating or demotivating? Now, in the moment when you observe, you could be 100% correct, but you got to ask yourself, are you inspiring? Are you motivating? My friend Brad, who's in the agricultural world, reminded me of this in the last couple of years. I made this quote 20 years ago, and I do believe in this, that one of the things that we need to hold ourselves accountable to is the impact we have on people. And the question I always encourage people to ask themselves, especially leaders, are people more or less motivated and inspired after they interact with me? And be really honest with yourself. Now, the 3rd type of coaching is continuous coaching. Continuous coaching is calendar-driven coaching. I'm scheduling time with my people. I'm going to focus on an area over a period of time. I'm going to go through 3 levels of change called effort, progress, and results. See, when we go back to situational coaching, let's go back to Jack, our hypothetical employee who's tough to work with. By the way, the employee who brought it to your attention, were they accurate? Maybe they're difficult. Maybe they're transferring ownership. What's really going on there? And by the way, if you happen to observe some of the attributes that that employee brought up, and let's say they just don't listen and they struggle with self-regulation and they're abrupt. By the way, everybody, that's me. Because I'm an idea guy. I got ideas and I struggle with ADD. So I have to calm down. I may never solve it. And so I work with a coach continually. He said, do you take deep breaths? Do you think before you speak? Do you go, before you speak. And I'm like, why? And he goes, practice it. And it's a technique to slow down my rebuttals, my responses, my overly eager helpfulness, which can really counteract my commitment to people because it can create a perception of I'm not listening to you. So when you think about this employee called Jack, hypothetically, situationally, something's been brought to you. You've observed some things. Do you honestly think that that person's just going to get better because you call them in the office and say, cut it out? Now let's go to youth sports. You situationally have your son or daughter come to you and say, I'm not making a lot of shots. And you go to a game and you observe them and you say, your elbow's out on your shot. And now if you're a basketball player, you know what I'm talking about. And you just say, I spotted your problem. Go do it. Oh, by the way, son or daughter, don't practice. I don't need to meet with you again. So I love to use these words creatively. Situational. Typically, situations live in the situations. We as leaders have to coach beyond the situation because there are attributes that could potentially be causing that. When we observe and spot, our results are very spotty. When we continually coach, we will have continual improvement. Now, I know that that's a little corny. I get it. So when we have these three types of coaching, here's my advice to you. Situationally, ask yourself, what's causing this? So when Jack's exhibiting this, give me some attributes he demonstrates. What are you doing to help him? You might have to dig in. Now, I know you're thinking right now, wait a minute, I don't have time for all this. Yes, you do. Because what's going to happen is if you give that situational coaching a very limited opportunity, you're going to have limited results. It's going to come back to your door. Number two, when we observe things, I go back to the Gallup organization. They literally talk about people engage 8 times more when we lead with the good stuff. Now, my clients have heard this for years and years, and it's corny. Call people into the office for the good stuff. Go out and schedule time and say, I'm just going to look for the good stuff. I'm going to go spot and observe people positively. I have a credit union that's currently doing this with the team that we're working with, and they're like talking about the results are dramatic. And I said, positivity breeds positivity. Negativity, constructive feedback builds negativity. I'm not saying we shouldn't give constructive feedback, but we have to ask ourselves, are we motivating or are we demotivating? Now, when we continually coach, and let's take Jack, who's struggling with self-regulation as our hypothetical, and I already gave you a little bit about who I am, and let's say he's not even aware he's doing it, he's going to need to practice that. He's going to need techniques and helpfulness. He's going to need someone to point out when it happens. He's going to need someone to reward him when he's demonstrating the attributes that he and maybe you as the leader want him to exhibit. So when we're coaching, we have to be very, 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 very conscientious of the situation. Is that a one-time thing? Or are there some things continually causing that? When we're observing or spot coaching, are we giving equal, if not more attention to the positive things? Here's my advice. I've said this for 30 plus years. I've never changed it. Track it. I have a credit union manager who did this years ago, and I love it. She would keep a tally mark of positive observations that she would verbally provide and constructive observations that she would verbally apply to people in her branch. And she put it on the back of her door. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Why do you do that? And she said, I want to be conscientious of this and I want to keep myself accountable. So we subscribe to a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 times should always be positive to every constructive. You will notice a dramatic difference. That's a mindset shift. Then when you continually coach and you have conversations, and I'm going to bring up our methodology here. This is our coaching program. When I look at direct coaching, I might say to Jack, every week I want you to come in with 2 examples. One where you felt like you really controlled your responses. Maybe one looking back where, you know what, you didn't do that. And maybe what caused that. Jack comes in, I'm going to ask questions. What happened? What did you learn? What are you going to do going forward? The activities might be, let's practice that conversation. The learning project establishes accountability and ownership on the rightful owner. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a sales pitch, but that's our 4-step coaching model. 8 to 9 minutes weekly or bi-weekly. Let me know your thoughts. A little bit shorter than our first lesson. Let me know your thoughts.